Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Michael Chung here, and today we're gonna take a look back a few years to 2015. I was 23 years old, and this is the first flip that I was ever involved in, and mistakes were made. And ultimately, I learned from these mistakes, and I wanna show you these mistakes to really emphasize the point of grit, of perseverance, and if you remember back to my goals video, just having that true north, whether it's trying to keep families fed, whether it's trying to, keep yourself sustainable, or ultimately, like me, give back to the community. It's super important for us to take our mistakes, learn from them, and grow from them. Now, before I get into how much I made or lost in this transaction, I want to take you guys the step-by-step journey of this flip and the mistakes that I made along the way, and also just realize that not much has changed. 5 years later, the flips I do now versus the flips I did then, it's just a few key things that need to be improved and identified. Everything was ultimately smooth sailing until it wasn't. The first thing that we did in flipping this property was identifying the property, and we saw what we thought was a lucrative opportunity. It was a real estate owned house that was sitting on the market for 60 days. We put in an offer that was under the list price and ultimately was able to receive it. Now, during that time, we had to figure out, how are we gonna actually purchase this home? Are we going to buy it with the loan, or are we gonna bring in investors to pull in cash and make a cash offer? What we decided to do at the time was, hey, let's mitigate our risk. Let's bring in 2 other investors to front 66% of the money, and that will help us to do more deals in the future. Now, honestly, that was a bit of a mistake. Putting so much of your cash, we call it leverage, into a deal is not the greatest return, because as we'll see, it didn't turn out to go as we had planned. Like I mentioned, it was a REO property, real estate owned. The original list price on this home was $670,000. 30 days later, they actually reduced the price to $603,000. And we knew the house wasn't moving, so we came in at $585,000 and got approved. And we thought it was gonna be smooth sailing from there, but little did we know, the renovation portion was gonna be tricky. So the renovation process went wrong because simply we underestimated the amount of work that we needed to put into this home. Now, for this particular home, it was REO and it was in pretty bad condition. So the things that we focused on for this renovation was landscaping, the front and the back. We upgraded to dual pane vinyl windows. We did some kitchen work. We refinished the cabinets and changed the countertop. And then we went ahead and we replaced the flooring with new laminates throughout. And then we did some minor work in the bathrooms, reglazing the bathtub and changing out the vanity and countertop set. Ultimately, we estimated amount that was actually about a half of the budget that it ended up being. We went into the renovation thinking $25,000 as our maximum budget. It ended up being $50,000. I doubled the budget. For my budget to absolutely double, there were some things that obviously happened that we found once we purchased a home that ended up costing way more. First part was the wallpaper. This house had wallpaper everywhere, and if you've ever tried to remove wallpaper, it can be an absolute nightmare. It's very labor intensive, and ultimately we had to pretty much redo a lot of the walls at the time. Secondly, in the back of this home, there was this huge patio that we thought could be easily removed, but it ended up being a huge project to get rid of this deck and ultimately haul it away. What can I do? I'm $25,000 over budget, but I have the house, I have investors that are relying on me. We gotta list the house, and this was another mistake. I listed the house too high. Instead of trying to play the market the way that it was showing, we listed at $720,000. It didn't sell. It sat on the market, and eventually I had to reduce the price to $695,000. People see that the price is reduced, they even lose more interest in it. Why doesn't anyone want this house? And snowball starts. So we did everything right, we thought. We staged the house beautifully, it was renovated beautifully, but there were still some issues that arose. First, like I mentioned, was the listed price was a little bit too high, and things that came up in the feedback of the showings was the location. The location was a little bit too close to the freeway, and it was too close to a big street called Rinaldi. Buyers in this market were looking to be kind of up in the hills in the suburban town. Feedback is, it's not good. The house is not moving. We're 30, 45 days into listing, and I got money. I got hundreds of thousands of dollars in investors that are wondering where their money is at. It was super stressful to be a part investor and to have a house that we're trying to list, and it was a trying time, to be honest. It really makes you question whether this is worth it. And it all boiled down when one day I went in for my weekly showing. I noticed that the garage was a little bit caved in for some reason. I went inside the house to find that the house was gutted. It was completely robbed. They broke the lock in the back door, and it was crazy because there was nothing of value in there. It was literally staging furniture that these people took, like a fake probably TV, but it was unbelievable. It just couldn't get worse at that point. And I remember the conversation that we had with the stager, calling this guy up and saying, "Hey, your furniture is stolen, and we have no idea where." Yeah, so police report was filed, and ultimately we were never able to catch the robbers. We just continued to show the house. We lowered the list price and eventually got a buyer to buy it and get through escrow. And finally, my investors were able to get their money back. Now, I want to take you guys through the actual numbers. We always go through the anticipated numbers and then the actual numbers. Anticipated, our baseline numbers, like I mentioned here, as you can see, is $585,000 was our purchase price. We anticipated $25,000. We wanted to sell at a $700,000 sale price, which would lead us, after our closing costs, to about a $48,000 profit in 90 days. Now, in that 90 days, that annualized return on investment, ROI, is gonna be about 29.86%, so almost 30%, which would have been a really, really great deal. But what we ended up finding out is the actual numbers, instead of $25,000 as you see there, it ended up being $50,000. So our total investment was $635,000. Instead of selling the house at $700,000, we sold it at $665,000. We had to adjust the closing cost, and it ended up being a net profit of only $10,000. Instead of 90 days, we held it for 120 days, and the return on investment was 4.64%. So yeah, there were a lot of mistakes that were made, and a lot of lessons to be learned. So if you're a new investor looking to get into this industry, one of the two biggest mistakes that I did, obviously number one was the budget. You really want to be careful before you purchase a home. Just because it's an REO property, just because it looks like a good deal, you really have to calculate the numbers. What's a realistic budget with what we call contingency, with things that are unforeseen, that is going to actually get this home ready to be sold. Secondly, the after repair value. We can think that the house is gonna sell for X amount, but ultimately the market will tell us the truth. And it's always gonna be better for us to underestimate the after repair value as opposed to overestimate it and not be able to give the return to our investors as we want. One of the things that I did is our investors that put in $100,000 plus, they're trusting in me, at a young age, to go into a deal with me. So what we ended up doing was splitting the commission, so that they could at least make some of their money and get that 4.64%, which at least beats the bank. So yeah, the people are most important. Lessons are learned, and we got to move on to the next deal. So first deal at 23 was not perfect. We are not perfect. Not every deal that we pursue is gonna be great. There will be good deals, there will be bad deals, but the idea is to continue to move forward, continue to show perseverance, and even if your budget ends up being way higher than you expect, or your house gets robbed during listing, ultimately we want to keep going forward. Don't ever close up shop. You know, for us as investors, we have to have the heart that no matter what happens, we roll with the punches and yeah, just keep fighting, I guess, and pursue that next deal. You know, don't just think because the first deal didn't go well that it's not for you. I really encourage you, that next deal, if you learn your lessons, implement those small changes, then that next deal will be that much better and better and better, and we're gonna create wealth for ourselves, for our family, and ultimately give back in terms of doing good for our community. So I want to thank you guys for joining us this week on this video, and hope you have a fantastic day. Blessings.